jokes they want to tell. Jump in here. Thank you guys for being here for the session Assessing for Suicide and Self-Harm with our speaker, Michelle Strain. Excuse me, I just have a couple of quick reminders. Please make sure you keep your microphone muted just so we don't have background noise disrupting the session. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, either in Zoom or in Whova, and we'll make sure Michelle sees those and can address those as we go. And then when the session is over, we would ask that you rate the session in Whova. You should have the, on your agenda, you should have a survey there. And then you'll also receive an email on Thursday with survey information there as well. So thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you so much. Please don't rate my jokes. That's not what you should rate. So my name is Michelle Strain. I am the instructional facilitator of counseling for Mid-Dell Schools. This is my 11th year in the school counseling setting. I have a couple of master's degrees in human relations and clinical mental health counseling, and I'm a licensed professional counseling candidate. I've worked mostly in the middle and high school levels for several years, and through the opportunity to go to some really fantastic trainings and have a lot of practical experiences, I put this session together initially for the counselors in our district. But as I was thinking about it, I could see this is just a tough topic. You know, this is not the easiest thing to do. And it was not easy for me when I started doing it myself. But as I got more experienced and practiced and as I went through more training, then it became more accessible for me. So what I just want to do is thank you for being here. I know we have people from elementary to middle to high school here. This is appropriate for all ages. And I also have a session for teachers that's a little bit different, has some of the same principles. So if this is something that you would like to share the parts of that are relevant to your staffs, then you just need to let me know, and I will be glad to share that presentation with you as well. So today we're going to talk about the action plan, signs and symptoms of suicidality and self-harm, some specific things about that, stages of adolescence and childhood versus warning signs, ALGE, which is an acronym I'm going to teach you today, and it stands for Assess, Listen, Give, and Encourage, twice actually. Talking about it, immediate steps you should take, the conversation, and then some role plays. So the very first thing I want to share with you is kind of the prereq for all assessment of any kind of mental health issue that your students might be having. This is a video by Brene Brown. It's an animated video. It's very short. It's less than 3 minutes, but it talks about empathy, and it is the best video on empathy I have ever seen. I show it in almost all of my presentations, and even if you've seen it, you can watch it again and learn something new. So I'm just going to share it with you real quick.
What is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting to read.
Michelle, I think we lost sound.
When you enjoy it as much as most of us do.
Is that better?
Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I absolutely love this video because it really talks about listening and validating someone's feelings, which we're going to talk about in this session. So ALGE is the action plan that actually I got from Mental Health First Aid for Youth, where I am a trainer. So assess for risk of suicide or self-harm, listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information, encourage appropriate professional help, and encourage self-help and other support strategies. That's kind of the action plan of how to assess for suicide and self-harm. And that is what we're going to be talking about. So when you're thinking about physical signs and symptoms, there are many different signs and symptoms that could indicate a problem. And I'm going to just go over some of them. And I want you to think about what this could be signs of other than a mental health condition. So cardiovascular, so pounding chest or pounding heart, chest pain, rapid heartbeat and blushing. Neurological, dizziness, headaches, sweating, tingling, and numbness. Respiratory, fast breathing or shortness of breath. Musculoskeletal, muscle aches and pains, restlessness, tremors, and shaking, and the inability to relax. So those could all be signs of a mental health crisis, but they could also be signs of other things, like a heart attack or an illness of some sort. So if you run into a kiddo who just has some physical symptoms, you really need to be careful that you don't need to call 911 or the school nurse instead of talking with them. So kind of use your judgment on that. There have been times when I've been talking with a student and they had a medical emergency in the middle of our conversation. And it was really hard to determine the difference between a medical issue and a psychological issue. So if you're ever in doubt, always call the nurse or call for help for that. There's some other signs and symptoms that might be an issue. So hormonal issues. It could be something as basic as an irregular cycle, changes in patterns of like overeating or not eating at all, or sleeping a lot more or a lot less. Appearance is a big one. Change in hygiene. You suddenly have a kiddo who is dressed well all the time to not showering, not washing their clothes, being really unkept. Eyes bloodshot or glassy, and it could be a mental health issue or it could be a substance use issue. Weight loss or weight gain also could be things. And so it's really important to keep all of this in mind in the bigger picture, not just isolated, because we could look at appearance and think, oh, this kid's on drugs, when really what's happening is they're in a deep state of depression or vice versa. Some other signs and symptoms include a depressed mood or mood swings, unrealistic or excessive anxiety or guilt, excessive irritability or anger. I know I've talked to kids before who just show up in my office and are really, really angry, and it's over something small, or maybe it's not over anything at all that they can identify. That could be a symptom. Lack of inhibition. You have the kid who is driving their car really, really fast, or is climbing to the top of a tree, or is jumping off their roof, or is starting to use substances. All those things could be an issue. Lack of emotion or emotional response. I think anytime I talk with a student about what's going on in their life and they cry, I think that's a really normal response, or they get emotional in some way. What really concerns me is the kids who offer no emotional response. That numbness is very, very concerning. And you almost get an eerie feeling when you're talking to them. That is definitely a major red flag that you should watch out for. Helplessness or hopelessness. If they're not talking about their plans for the weekend or for next week, if they're not feeling like there's anything that anyone can do to help them, those are very concerning. Oversensitivity to comments or criticism, and of course, low self-esteem. A lot of our kids have low self-esteem, and that symptom alone is probably not enough to indicate suicidality or self-harm, but it is something that in combination with other things could become an issue. So other signs and symptoms of behaviors: frequent self-criticism or blame. The kid who says they're sorry 500 times a day. I'm sorry. Pessimism, nothing will ever get better. This is the worst situation ever. I'm having the worst day ever. Difficulty concentrating or remembering things. Indecisiveness or confusion. Rigid thinking, like it has to be this way and no other way, or I can't move forward. Racing thoughts. I see clients in a private counseling practice as well, and those worry me. When they say things like my brain just won't turn off, or I can't go to sleep because I just keep thinking about things. That in combination with other things can be really concerning. Tendency to believe that others see you in a negative light. If you think everyone thinks you're the bad guy or not good enough, could be a real issue. Altered sense of self. Maybe you've heard of a sense of grandeur, or maybe the opposite, where they think they're a terrible person. When they are, it's not really a normal thought of how they are, could be an issue. A big one is delusions or hallucinations. There's a really good exercise to do on this one if you're actually in person, where you have a 3-person group and two people are trying to talk back and forth while the third person is whispering in someone's ear, negative words. And that's what it's like to have audio hallucinations, and it's very concerning. There can be a lot of reasons for delusions and hallucinations. It could be a medication issue. It could be something like low sodium. It could be a mental health issue. It could be severe depression. It could be schizophrenia. There's all kinds of reasons. And I think we tend to think the worst case scenario every time, but there are many different kinds of reasons for that. Odd ideas or lack of insight, where things don't seem, they're not living in a good reality. Suspiciousness, thinking everyone is out to get them. And then, of course, thoughts of death or suicide. Some other behavioral symptoms include crying spells. Now, everybody cries sometimes, but kids who just really struggle with this, they're crying every day, they're crying multiple times every day. Withdrawal from others is a concern. We'll talk about some stages and warning signs versus normal, but that could be a concern. Neglect of responsibilities. Now, a lot of teenagers especially neglect their responsibilities, but we're talking about big things like they're supposed to care for a younger sibling and they don't show up to do that, or they don't take good care of them and there's a situation, or they've been doing all their homework all year and suddenly they stop. That would be a behavior to be concerned about. Loss of interest in appearance would be a big one. Loss of motivation. Slow movement, like they're in slow motion. the use of drugs and alcohol is a very, very common behavioral symptom for people who are struggling with a mental health issue. Generally, the reason why is because they're self-medicating. They have pain they're trying to avoid, or maybe they have an addiction of some sort, which would be considered a mental health issue. So there's many reasons why that could happen, but starting to use initially or using a lot more, coming to school high or drunk would be a great deal of concern. Changes in their energy level, obsessiveness or compulsiveness, avoidance or phobic behavior, showing distress or talking rapidly. Again, these things by themselves might not be a big deal at all, but when you start adding them together, they can be really concerning. So let's talk a little bit about self-harm. My experience has been, this kind of goes in hills and valleys, like different waves, where it's almost like a fad at times, where I actually had a student tell me one time, well, I self-harmed because I made a pact with my friend and she said that she wasn't going to self-harm. And so I said, if she did self-harm, then I would hurt myself. And she did, so I did. I mean, that's kind of obviously poor decision-making, but also not really, there's just a lot of reasons, there's a lot of reasons why people can hurt themselves, why they choose to do that. Some of it might be things that you would think of, like they have a lot of emotional pain and they'd prefer to have physical pain instead. Sometimes people feel numb and they want to feel something, and so they injure themselves. It can be a body image issue. There's just a lot of reasons. And so to keep that in mind if you have a student who's self-harming is important. There are many ways that students can injure themselves. We obviously think of cutting as a major, this is the major self-harming mechanism, but there are many ways. People can burn themselves. People can scratch themselves until they bleed. Some people can punch a wall. I'm sure you've had a wall puncher in your midst before. This can be a form of self-harm, especially if they're doing it to punish themselves, which I've seen before. They can be pulling out their hair. There's many, many different things. They could be starving themselves. Anything that is harmful to themselves, they do, would be considered self-harm. Now, it does not mean that they're suicidal. Sometimes people who are self-harming are suicidal, but it's not always a given. They're sometimes very far apart. And just because they're self-harming does no impact on what they want to do, like as a permanent decision. So some things to look for would be unexplained or oddly explained injuries or cuts. And this might be visible to you. It could be on their arms or wrists, but sometimes when somebody doesn't want you to know, they choose a place where you're never going to see, like their stomach or their legs, or their feet or ankles or their upper arm. They choose a location that is more concealed. So you might see several cuts or injuries in one area. A thing used to be where people would wear scrunchies on their wrists or lots of bracelets. And if you see those, it may be nothing. It could be a visco girl, or it could be somebody who is hiding something they've done to themselves. They're wearing long sleeves or pants, even in hot weather. One thing I've noticed a difference in is some people who hurt themselves really want you to know. And it is more of a cry for help, where they'll wear short sleeves and not conceal their injuries. And some people don't want you to know. And they're both serious and they both need to be addressed. But people who conceal their injuries, it's even more concerning to me, because it is something they don't want you to find out as opposed to wanting you to find out. So let's talk about some typical stages versus warning signs. Adolescence is a crazy time. Pre-teenage years are a crazy time. A tween is a crazy time. Even some little children have some typical stages versus warning signs. So In adolescence, it's normal to withdraw from your family to spend more time with your friends, but a potential warning sign would be withdrawing from everyone and your social activity. So you're not just withdrawing from your family, you're withdrawing from everyone. That would be very concerning. It's normal to want more privacy. My 16-year-old just told me this week, Mom, just leave me alone. I want you to treat me like an adult. I had words for him about acting like an adult if you want to be treated like an adult. But it was really normal. It was a really normal adolescent thing for him to do. But when someone becomes secretive or need for privacy or seems to be hiding something, that's a potential warning sign. Moving from their childhood likes to teen pursuits, normal. Moving from dolls to social media, for example, or moving from playing kickball at recess to talking with your friends, normal. But when you lose interest in your favorite activities and not replace them with other things, can be very concerning. So you have a kiddo who just stops playing sports or doesn't care about it anymore, or drops out of band or orchestra, or they no longer are interested in something that they've always done, a hobby that they've had, something they've been really good at. Definitely could be a warning sign. And again, it's things that are in combination with each other that you need to be concerned about. So let's talk about the A in ALGE, the assess for risk factors. So there are many different risk factors that could be an issue for our students. Obviously we think about trauma, and I could talk all day about that, or maybe for weeks about that. Trauma doesn't always make you suicidal or self-harm, but it could be an indicator. It could be a risk factor for you. Anytime anyone has a stressful life event, abuse or trauma, it could be an indicator. Now, there are lots of kids who are never suicidal, who experience a traumatic experience or abuse, but it definitely could be something and could be a concern. Like I said, a difficult or abusive childhood definitely could be a risk factor. Ongoing stress or anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety most of my life. I know one of my sons has, and that is definitely a risk factor. There's almost only so much you can feel like you can take sometimes. Medical conditions and hormonal changes. If they have a medical condition where they're always in pain, that could be an issue. Or if they feel like there's no hope, it could be a real issue. Hormonal changes too, man, they can throw your emotions totally out of whack, boys and girls. So that could be a risk factor. Side effects of medication. Just had this conversation today with one of the counselors here in Mid-Del about a student who just increased a dosage and suddenly was very suicidal. And I said, let the parent know this could be as a result of their medication. There are definitely side effects with some antidepressants. It's not common, but it is something to be aware of. Life-threatening, chronic, or painful illness, a brain injury. Brain injuries can really change people, and that is definitely something to keep in mind. A previous episode of mental illness. So there is a myth that just because you're suicidal once means you're suicidal forever, and that's just not true. A lot of people are just suicidal maybe one time in their lives, but there are some people who have a chronic mental health condition who struggle with this. This is something that they go through frequently, and they really have to be careful, take their medication or stay in counseling or just take really good care of themselves, or it's possible to go through that again. Another mental illness or a comorbidity, maybe they have anxiety, they're more at risk for depression. Maybe they have a personality disorder. They could be more at risk for depression. So some things to think about. Really want to know is a family history of mental illness. Mental illness is definitely hereditary. And you also, if you have a mentally ill parent, that can be really hard sometimes to deal with that. So either one of those things could be an issue. A learned behavior, a chemical imbalance, which a lot of people talk about. And anytime I talk to a parent who's reluctant to maybe receive treatment on this, I say, if your child had diabetes, you would get them insulin. If your child had cancer, you'd treat them with chemotherapy if you needed to. Mental illness and chemical imbalance is really no different. The brain is a part of your body and should be treated no differently. Substance misuse or sensitivity, seasonal factors. I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but I just think about that 2 weeks where we were home with so much snow on the ground and not really being able to leave the house. That was hard on me. And I wasn't suicidal at all, but it was hard. It's hard emotionally to deal with something like that, or when it's gray outside all the time. That's why I love spring so much. And possibly other environmental factors. So listening non-judgmentally is really important. Using I statements. So when you're talking to someone who is struggling, it's important to say things like, I noticed that you were having a hard time today, or I noticed that you haven't been turning in your homework. Not, what's wrong with you? You haven't turned in your homework. Or what's your problem? But saying things like, I think, I want, I need, I noticed, really important when you're talking to someone. Ask questions, don't be afraid. A lot of times, I would say a majority of the time, people are relieved to tell you what's going on in their lives, and they want you to notice, and asking questions is really important. But don't push. If they shut you way down, don't make them uncomfortable or push them back into their backs into a corner. So realize, like I said, that they tell you something, it might be a huge relief to them. And then finally, remember, it's about them, not about us. It's so easy for us to interject our own situation or our own story. Well, when I was 14, I felt such and such way, or I've suffered with depression too. Sometimes it's appropriate, only probably if you have a really established, good relationship with the student. But most of the times they just don't care. They're in such a deep place that they are only seeing what they need and what's best for them. So remember, it's about them. The G in algae is give reassurance and information. So be genuine, don't be fake, don't be an authoritarian, be really respectful of them and genuine. Be careful about using slang. I don't know if you guys have teenagers or tweens, you may have tried to use slang before and they roll their eyes at you. Well, this is no different than your students. So be careful with that. Be comfortable with silence. It's in fact one of the greatest tools that you can use. There are times when I just don't know what to say as a counselor. And so I'll just sit still and be quiet, which is really hard to do. But sometimes when you can just be quiet and still, then it's the best thing. It makes them fill the space with information. Be present without comparison. Like, well, your brother's never like this, or your friends are happy, why aren't you? Don't avoid doing that. Be aware that their feelings are real. Man, I have had some interesting cases. There was a time when I was doing a group mediation with a group of girls because they were in this big argument. They were all best friends, but they were in this big argument about who the biggest One Direction fan was. And I know for me, I'm thinking this is ridiculous, but to them, it was their whole world. So I took it seriously because it was serious for them. And be accepting, even if you don't agree. Guys, this is so important. We have kids who have different lifestyles, whose families have different lifestyles. And the fact of the matter is, our opinion does not matter one bit on what we think or feel. What matters is how they're feeling and what's best for them. So being accepting of them, even if you don't agree with what they're saying or doing, is super, super, super important. The opposite of that can be really, really detrimental to our kids. Be aware of your facial expression. Y'all, I have a terrible poker face, and there have been times when I've just been wanting to go, oh my gosh. But you can't do that. You want them to be calm and you want to be reassuring to them. Be positive with your feedback and be helpful without telling them how they should feel. What a student does not want to hear or need to hear is, And 5 years from now, you won't even remember that boyfriend's name of yours. He will be just a faded memory. This is so not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. All of those things might be true, but it's definitely not something you should tell your student. The next E is encourage professional help. Connect with your student the same day of the concern. If a teacher tells you at 4 o'clock and the buses have all left and everybody has gone home, but the teacher says, I'm really concerned about Susie, she said some things today that concern me, you've got to call home and check on her. You cannot wait till the next day. If it's, the end of the day and you're afraid she'll miss her bus, call her in anyway. You've got to do it the same day. Because if you find out and you know about something that's happening and you don't do something about it and something happens to that kiddo, you can be held responsible. And that's not a position I want any of you to be in. Let the child know that they're not alone. There are several professionals who can help them. Let the parent know that as well. And calling home is probably required. Really, the only time I can think that calling home is not required would be if the reason the child is self-harming or suicidal is because the parent is abusing them. And you would obviously get DHS and the police involved if that were the case. Sometimes on this, you get a kiddo who says, my parents don't take me seriously. I don't think they're going to take me to get help, and I really need help. You still have to call home. You might call the police first and get them involved, but you still have to inform the parent. And encourage self-help is the other E. Have them identify others who might be helpful for them. Maybe it's a special aunt. Maybe it's not their parents. Maybe it needs to be a teacher in the building that they check in with. Help them figure out somebody else. Explore activities that might help manage symptoms. The very first thing I talk to my clients about and talk to my students about is when they tell me they're feeling depressed is, are you doing any exercise or physical activity? We know there's a lot of research that tells us we release endorphins when we do that, and it's just so good for us to do that. Find strategies that interest them, any kind of coping skill, and encourage them to discuss these strategies with their health professionals, their doctors, or their counselors outside of school. There are some warning signs that you don't want to overlook: threatening to hurt or kill yourself, seeking access to pills, weapons, or other means, talking, writing, or drawing about death, dying, or suicide, obviously hopelessness or no reason for living or no purpose to go on, rage, anger, or revenge, acting reckless or engaging in risky activities or feeling trapped could be really important warning signs you don't want to overlook. Also, increasing drug or alcohol use, withdrawing from friends or family, dramatic mood change. I've always learned that it could be a mood change in either direction, and I didn't really believe it until I saw it for myself once with a student who was kind of chronically depressed, came in one day just in the best mood ever, and it was really weird. And I said to her, have you decided to kill yourself? And she looked shocked, and she goes, how did you know that? Because sometimes people will make the decision that they're going to kill themselves and they feel a sense of relief and an unburdening because they have a plan. So even the change to a really positive from a really negative that's out of the ordinary is something to be concerned about. Sleep issues, either all the time or not enough, being super anxious or agitated, or giving away prized possessions, all important warning signs not to overlook. So when you talk with a person, discuss what you've observed. Appear confident, even if you feel scared. Feeling confident or appearing confident is really important for the student to feel safe. Involve the person in decision-making whenever possible. So that is something like, would you like for me to call your parents while you're sitting here? Or would you like to call your parents while I'm sitting here? And then I'll talk to them after you do. Or would you like to sit in this chair or that chair? Would you like a drink? Would you like something to eat? And of course, if danger is imminent, always call 911. If they have a weapon, if they're running from you, if they've locked themselves in the bathroom, whatever that is, don't hesitate to call for help. So asking the questions can be tough, but to say, are you thinking about killing yourself? Very important. It's hard to do it the first few times you do it. The worst case scenario is they look at you and go, no, Mrs. Strain, I'm totally fine. I don't know what you're thinking. That's what you want to happen. But a lot of times they're just waiting for you to ask the question. 3 most important words of a counselor is tell me more. Tell me more about that. Do you have a plan? Do you have access to your plan? If they say, yeah, my plan is that I'm going to shoot myself, and they don't have any access to weapons, maybe not as urgent, still really, really serious, but maybe not as urgent as someone who says, yeah, I know where the keys to my parents' gun closet are, and I can access that anytime. Never, never, never leave the person alone if they're suicidal. Even if they say, I promise I won't do anything. Never, never, never leave them alone. Involve other people to help as often as you can. Most schools are going to have a procedure in place that requires you to notify your administrator or the SRO, contact the parents. And again, it is always an option for you to call police to get help. If police hear that a student is suicidal and they talk to them and they are, or if you write a third-party affidavit saying what they told you, they will take them into emergency detainment or protective custody and take them for a mental health evaluation. So that's always an option, especially if the parent says, oh, Johnny does this for attention all the time. In the conversation, you want to restore calm, offer as many choices as you can, validate their feelings, and reflect and repeat, like, I heard you say that you feel this way, or I noticed, or what I understand you saying is this. So they really know that you're listening and that they heard you. Now I have a couple of role plays, and I think we have time for both of them. One is on assessing for self-harm. One is assessing for suicide. Thanks to my good friend and colleague, Lori Hollingsworth, for doing these role plays with me. This kind of based on some issues that we've seen ourselves. So I'm going to play this for you now so you can see what it actually looks like. This is our self-harm role play. Hi, Ellie. I just wanted to call you in and check on you today. How's it going?
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's been going on?
Not much, just adjusting, and school's weird and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any idea why someone might be worried about you?
I don't know.
Is there something going on, like you having trouble at home or trouble with your friends, or is there anything that you're worrying about?
Yeah. I mean, like, things at home have been really, really weird. My dad lost his job, and things have been, like, money's been really tight, and so everybody's just on edge and arguing all the time, and it's really stressful.
It does sound stressful. So how have you been coping with that?
Not really great. I mean, there's not really anybody at home that I can talk to about it, because I don't want to stress them out, because I know they have enough to be stressed about themselves. So I don't want to burden anybody at home. So I just try to, like, deal with it by myself.
Yeah. So I know you don't want to burden anyone, but dealing with it by yourself might be really tough to do that.
Yeah.
So have you been talking to some of your friends maybe, or another adult that could have let me know they're worried about you?
Yeah. I mean, I've told some of my friends, or maybe they just noticed that I've been different, but I don't want other people to worry about my problems. Everybody has enough problems of their own.
But you're really important, and the way you feel is important, and I want to make sure you're okay. Are you safe?
I mean, I don't want to die. I don't want to kill myself, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I mean, that's sort of what I'm thought about hurting yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I have.
You've hurt yourself?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Well, there's just so many feelings. And so I just kind of get to the point where I just don't really want to like feel them anymore. So I've cut myself.
You've cut yourself. What have you cut yourself with?
Just a razor.
When was the last time you did that?
A few days ago.
Does anyone at home know about this?
No, no, they'd be so mad.
You think they'd be mad?
Yeah. My family used to be really close. So like, if they knew that I was hurting and I didn't tell them, they'd be really mad at me.
You know, in my experience, families aren't mad when their child is hurting. They're just worried. They love them and they want them to get the help they need. Do you think that now is a good time to get some help for what you're going through?
Yeah, probably, but I'm just scared. Like, I don't know how to bring up that conversation with my parents. If they know that I've been talking to somebody at school about it and I didn't talk to them about it, I'm just afraid that they're going to get upset and it's just going to make everything worse.
Yeah, I understand that you're scared, but I really think that they would want to know. And I think that they would want to be able to help you and take you to counseling or talk to you more about it. And I think that what we should do is I think we should tell them together. What do you think of that?
I mean, do I have to be here when you talk to them?
I really think it's important that you're in the room so you can hear what I say to them. So there's no questions about that. But we can talk about it. If you would rather tell them while I listen and then I could talk to them later, we could do that too. Would you rather do that?
No, I think I want you to tell them.
Okay. So would you rather me contact mom or dad?
My mom.
Your mom? Okay. Is she working? Is she at home? Do you know where she is?
I think she's at work.
Okay.
I say
Don't
no.
be scared because really your mom loves you and she's going to want to help you. And if she doesn't want to help you for some reason, we'll still figure out how to get you the help that you need. Don't worry. I'm here to support you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to call mom. Okay. So there's a lot of things I did.
I'm very happy that you guys are doing.
Go ahead. So a lot of options were given, a lot of things. So I'm going to play the second one for you. There's some discussion questions, but we really don't have time for those. So I'm going to play the next one.
Hey, Chandler, what's going on?
And I am just having the worst day. It's terrible.
What happened?
Oh,
One thing is
stupid.
we're
I'm dating Joey, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was until he broke up with me. But
Uh-oh.
before he broke up with me, I sent him a picture of myself. And, it wasn't the kind of picture you want to get around, right? Well, when I got to school this morning, one of my friends came up to me and told me that the picture is all over the school. He has sent it to other people and it's just spread and spread and spread. And I cannot take this. I just want to die. Like, this is horrible. It's the worst case scenario.
I can tell that's really upsetting. I can understand that would be super upsetting.
Yeah, I'm upset. Like, everybody has seen me and I don't know how to fix this. There's no coming back from this. It's just, I just don't see how I can go on.
You feel really violated.
Yes, I do feel violated. It's exactly how I feel.
So I think before we talk any more about it, I want to help you kind of calm down a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Okay, because first we need to make sure your brain's getting some oxygen, all right?
Yeah.
So hold up a hand for me, okay? And we're gonna breathe as we go up. I want you to inhale through your nose and then hold it at the top of the mountain, and we're gonna blow it out real slowly through our mouth. We're gonna hold it We're going to inhale, go up the mountain and hold it. And exhale real slowly down the mountain. Is that helping?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need to do some more?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay. So I'm glad you're breathing.
Yeah.
You know, first and foremost, I think we definitely need to address what happened and what's going on and what's causing you to feel this way. But first, I want to make sure that you're safe. I've heard you say things like you want to die and you can't go on like this. So tell me more about that.
What else should I do? Like, I cannot go on in the school knowing that my picture has been spread all over the school and all of these people have seen my nudes. Like, I can't, like, there's just no point. My life is totally ruined.
So have you seriously considered wanting to die, or is it just something like you wish would happen, or is it something you're really thinking about?
No, I'm serious.
Have you tried?
Well, I almost tried.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, last night after Joey broke up with me, I went to the kitchen and I got a knife. And I took it back to my room and I looked up ways on the internet to slit my wrists, and pretty much I chickened out. And of course, at the time, I didn't think anything could get worse, but now it is worse. Now that I know my picture's out there.
So what did you do with the knife?
I put it back in the kitchen this morning.
Okay, well, that's good. I can tell that you're feeling like really stuck though.
I do feel stuck. I have no options. Like, you can't get it back. It's out there.
So are you still so what I hear you saying is that today you feel even worse than you did last night.
I do feel worse. Absolutely.
Okay, so walk me through like what's gonna happen when you leave school today.
Well, I'm going to go get the knife and I'm going to get in my bathtub and I'm going to finish what I couldn't finish last night.
Chandler, that's real serious.
I just don't have any other choice.
Well, I understand that, but you know, it's part of my job to help keep you safe, right?
Yeah.
So I've got, now I really appreciate you telling me how you're really feeling and what you're going through right now. Because you know that now I've got to do some things to get you some help, right?
Oh my God, are you going to tell my parents? They're going to kill me if they find out I sent that picture. Oh, you can't tell my parents.
I understand. Let's talk about it, okay? What are you worried about most worried about in telling your parents?
They're going to find out what I did and they're going to think less of me for it. They're going to think I'm a slut. And then when they find out that I want to die, they're going to think I'm crazy.
Those are big feelings. I appreciate your honesty in how you're feeling, but at the same time, how would they feel if you weren't alive anymore?
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it.
I think they would be completely devastated.
Yeah, you're right. They probably would.
So I think we should take it one step at a time, okay? And first we need to tell somebody how you're feeling, okay? And I really think it's important that you get some help today. Okay.
Well, what does that mean?
Well,
so I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because we're just about out of time. And I wanted to see if anybody had any questions or any comments, or if you need anything. I'm also posting my personal cell phone number. You can call or text me. There's my email address for you to email me. I'll be happy to send you the slides. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
That was one of the questions we got, was how can they get the slides from you? So you guys can email her there. And then a couple other quick questions, maybe that you can address quickly, came through about, is it appropriate to ask a younger student direct questions like, do you want to kill yourself? And they were talking about a kid that's around 6 or 7.
So I think you need to, yes, I do think it's appropriate. I think you need to use words the child would understand and words that maybe you've heard the child say. If you say, are you thinking about killing yourself? You need to make sure they understand what that means. So it's whatever's appropriate language-wise for their age. And they may have a crazy idea, like they're going to jump off their roof or something crazy, but it's still appropriate for you to ask. And that doesn't make them less suicidal if their method is a terrible method.
Is there a suicide screener that's recommended for use with students?
I do have a safety threat assessment that I'm happy to share with anyone. I can you can email me and I'll send it to you. I think it's kind of a slippery slope to do a specific suicide screener because it's just much better to have a conversation. But I do have a safety threat assessment that it can at least help you decide if the student is truly at risk for suicide or self-harm.
Do you have any advice for what to do if the student says their parent already knows, when you were saying, let's call your parents, if they say they already know?
It's a great question. So a couple of things about that. If the child says the parent knows and did nothing, I think it's important that you find out more details. And if it really seems like the parent is ignoring it or doesn't believe them, then you definitely need to get the police involved so they can take them into protective custody. But you also have the option to call DHS for neglect. And mental health neglect is a real thing. So that is definitely an option to do.
I think the last question here is, if you do meet with parents, do you utilize the State Department of Education's notification of emergency parent conference form, or is there another document that you prefer and keep on file?
That's a funny question because I actually created that form whenever I was at the State Department of Education. So yes, I use it every time. I've modified, we have a district one that is the same form. I just have some district information on it. But I think it's extremely important to use a form for 2 reasons. One, because it covers you and it's a safety mechanism to put in place for you, making sure that the parent knows that they've been notified officially. And 2, a form also lets the parent know of the serious nature of the situation and make sure that they are really taking as seriously as possible.
Okay, do you still have a couple minutes? We've had a few more.
Sure, I can stay on as long as you need.
Okay, so do you feel comfortable discussing concerns you have about any bureaucratic chain of command issues?
Sure, I can talk about that for sure. I know it can be hard sometimes when you have a principal in your building saying, oh, that's not a big deal, don't call home about that. But yeah, our duty, our ethical standards as counselors are, the state law requires us to report things. Is that kind of what you're meaning by that, or?
I think so. It just said,
I mean,
bureaucratic.
Ultimately, I know there are some districts who don't have the luxury of having a counselor facilitator or director that they can rely on kind of as backing. So I think ultimately you have to rely on the law and make a report and do the right thing that's ethically responsible and legal. And if you have issues with it, you can also call me. I can give you the best advice that I can at the time, or you can email me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. You also have such great support at the State Department of Education. Beth Whittle is the Executive Director of Counseling. She would be such a great resource for any of you. If you haven't reached out to the State Department, they have a great big counseling staff, and I can't recommend them enough. They know a lot. They have a lot of great advice. They have attorneys they can consult on things. That's also a great resource for you.
And then any advice for when a parent refuses to obtain help for a child who is self-harming beyond filing for neglect with DHS? Is there any other?
I think you keep calling. DHS. And, ultimately, our job is not to investigate or make a determination of any kind. Our job is to report. And ultimately, they're going to take it seriously if you keep calling. You also can call the police. That is another option that you have, because the police can also file a report. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes DHS will take a higher consideration for a police DHS report than even an educator's. So, yes.
All right, I think that covers all the questions. Lots of people thanking you for sharing this great information today.
You're certainly welcome.
As Michelle said, her contact information is there on the screen, and we put her email address in the chat box if you would like to reach out to her for more information. And we appreciate you guys all being here today. Michelle, if you don't have anything else, I will end the session.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Don't hesitate to reach out.